Uno Ullberg was a famous Finnish architect, who worked in most of his life in Vyborg. Vyborg belonged until 1917 to Russian Empire as the part of Grand Duchy of Finland. Then it was part of Finland, and from 1944 part of first the Soviet Union and then Russia. The style of his architecture covers the transition in architecture from so-called Nordic Classicism of the 1920s to Functionalism during the 1930s. Ullberg is regarded as a leading architect of the Nordic Classicism period and was the first to introduce Functionalism to Vyborg. Though his most notable buildings were constructed in Vyborg, he became famous not only in his native town but nationwide. Education and early works. Ullberg graduated from the architectural faculty in Helsinki Polytechnic Institute, now Aalto University. After returning in 1906 to the native town, he joined Axel Gulden, who had studied with him in Helsinki, for the purpose of setting up their own architectural bureau. They worked together until 1909, when Ullberg decided to quit and to start working under his own name. The most important work created in collaboration with Gulden was the headquarters of Hagman and Ampco at Piersbanka 214 inches in Vyborg. The building represents the compositional and formal variations of Jugendstil, Art Nouveau and National Romanticism. The main elevation pediments, openings, window frames, portals, and the granite facades are quite typical of National Romanticism, which at the time was also the prevailing architectural style in Finland for key public buildings, most notably in the works of architects Geselius Lindgren and Saarinen, Paris, and National Museum of Finland, Helsinki. The interiors of the building were among the most stylish and rich in the city. The inside of the house survived harmful transformations during the Soviet period, so the interior decorations were greatly damaged. After leaving the collaboration with Gulden, Uno Ullberg continued to work alone. Between 1910 and 1930 he designed a large number of public buildings and houses, most of which are situated in Vyborg. Among these are several office buildings in Praasisk, Imatra and other Finnish towns. The early works in Vyborg could be described as traditional town architecture with a classicistic influence. The most interesting examples from this period include the reconstruction of the Union Bank, the Karjala offices, the store and residence of V. Diplan, the restoration of the famous medieval round tower in the middle of the old city centre. Ullberg converted the massive old building into a restaurant and cafe. The White Era. The most important period in Ullberg's architect career is connected with the White Era of functionalist architecture. However, some of his important works can be considered as marking a transition from Nordic Classicism to Functionalism during the 1920s and early 1930s. Ullberg found his own unique conception and interpretation of functionalistic architecture. The main aspect of his philosophy is the connection between the functional and the classical. In his early works, Ullberg used as his basis classical architecture, emphasizing reductive common elements from classicism. The most important works of the era became Ullberg's reply to the serious social needs of the city. Among these works are the Vaapuri Art Museum and Drawing School, the Vyborg Pantalaitosoi Building, the Vyborg Provincial Archives, and the Vyborg Maternity Hospital. The most important of Ullberg's works is the combined Vyborg Art Museum and Drawing School, completed in October 1930. The building is situated near the 16th-century Pantsalahti bastion at the southern end of the city. Contrasting with its fortress surroundings, the white stuccoed building commands the view over the South Harbour and the approach from the sea. The massing of the building comprises two wings placed at an angle to each other, with a wedge-shaped, paved courtyard separating the two. The wider part of the courtyard faces southwest, towards the harbour, and there is an imposing twin row of classical columns with a rectangular cross-section supporting an equally stylistic curving architrave, doubling as a corridor that connects the two buildings. The approach to the museum from the city is through a series of flights of steps leading to an opening, set at an angle, between the windowless north walls of the wings. The walls facing south are almost as austere, with the central colonnade acting as the focal point. The four-story building of the Vyborg.Vyborg was the first completed example of functionalist movement in the city. It has as many rows of distinct, very simplified bands of windows, or rather, more like four very wide windows with very thin mullions. The first floor fenestration consists of a double row of windows, 22 in a row, while the upper three only have one. The bolt fenestration is enabled by the use of a solid reinforced concrete girdleless framework with mushroom-form columns that free the brick facade of its load-bearing function. The cross-section of columns on the last stage is much smaller than on the first one. It's because of the increase of mechanical tension down from the roof. The basement. Ullberg worked not only with his own bureau, but also acted as the Vyborg city architect in 1932 to 1936. During this period he controlled the urban conception of the city and worked on the master plan. Ullberg was very successful in designing medical facilities. During the White Era he built a number of hospitals in Vyborg. In 1936 Ullberg moved to Helsinki, where he became the head of the architectural bureau of the National Board of Health. This job was connected to his great experience in the theory of the design of medical buildings and his practical design achievements. After the Winter War with the Soviet Union, when after the short period of being a Soviet city in 1941 Vyborg was belonged again to Finland, Ullberg quickly drew up a plan for the reconstruction for his native town, but there was no time or possibility to implement the plan because the entire city was annexed to the Soviet Union. Ullberg died in Helsinki in 1944 at the age of 65. Important buildings. 1909 Headquarters of Hackman and Amco, Vyborg, Russia. 1911 to 1915 Finland Trade Bank offices and residence, Vyborg, Russia. 1913 United Northern Bank Building, Sortovala, Russia. 1915 Bank Office, Sortovala, Russia. 1921 Trade House and Residence of V. Dipple, Vyborg, Russia. 1929 Karjala Offices, Vyborg, Russia. 1930 Apartment House with Public Spaces, Vyborg, Russia. 1930 Vyborg Art Museum and Drawing School, Vyborg, Russia. 1930 Hospital Building, Vyborg, Russia. 1931 Vyborg and Pantelitozoi Building, Vyborg, Russia. 1932 Swedish-German Pietari Paavali Lutheran Congregation, Vyborg, Russia. 1932-1933 Vyborg Provincial Archives, Vyborg, Russia. 1935 Bus Station Office, Sortovala, Russia. 1936 Villa Solkala Espoo, Finland. 1937 Vyborg Hospital Maternity and Women's Wards, Vyborg, Russia. 1937 Reconstruction of bus station, Vyborg, Russia. 1938 Renovation of Round Tower, Vyborg, Russia.